I am now calling to order a regular meeting of the City Council, Tuesday, January 14th, 2025 at 7 p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Madam Secretary.
Councilwoman Rogancy.
Here.
Councilman Dwyer.
Here.
Councilwoman McGee.
Here.
Councilman Boyke.
Here.
Councilman Noonan.
Present.
Councilman Lafferty.
Here.
Councilwoman Moore is present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Next item.
Next item is adoption of the consent agenda. So moved.
Support Lafferty.
Discussion. Hearing none, I will call the question. Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan?
Yes.
Ms. McGee?
Yes.
Rogan C. is a yes. Motion carries. Next item.
Next item is adoption of the agenda. So moved with discussion.
Support.
Support Boyke. Discussion. Madam Secretary.
Thank you. We have a couple of items to add. The first is under council business, 13D, proposed settlement in the matter of James Rush. The 13E, proposed settlement in the case of Deborah Hutcherson. And the third, 13F, is a pre-litigation, proposed pre-litigation settlement in Wenzel, the Wenzel case. Also, under council business, and we're adding an item as 13G, which would be a request for the mayor to declare an emergency based on the weather that's coming up. And as item under the announcements, we have a resolution in support of DOT's RAISE program. That will be 10B. And that's it. That's the reason.
Any other discussion? Are the makers of the motion comfortable with the amendments?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke? You good with the amendments?
Pardon?
Are you good with the amendments?
Yes.
Thank you. I will call the question. Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan?
Yes.
Ms. McGee?
Yes.
Rogan C. is a yes. Motion carries. Next item.
Next item is calendar of pending matters. I keep forgetting to remove this, but the item from 9/10/2024 should be removed.
Any other discussion?
Receive and file.
Yeah.
Motion to receive and file.
Thank you. Support anyone?
Support.
Support McGee. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Next item is 7A, approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of December 17th, 2024. So moved.
Support Dwyer.
Discussion? Hearing none, I will call the question. Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan?
Yes.
Ms. McGee?
Yes.
Rogan C. is a yes. Motion carries. Next item.
Next item is 7B, approval of the meeting minutes of the special meeting of December 19th, 2024. So moved.
Support Dwyer.
Discussion? Hearing none, I will call the question. Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan?
Yes.
Ms. McGee?
Yes.
Rogan C. is a yes. Motion carries. Next item.
Next item is 8A, approval of the bills of the general revenue funds. So moved.
Support Lafferty.
Discussion. Hearing none, I will call the question. Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan?
Yes.
Ms. McGee?
Yes.
Rogan C. is a yes. Motion carries. Next item.
Next item is 8B, approval of the bills of the water and sewer system. So moved.
Support Dwyer.
Discussion. Hearing none, I will call the question. Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan?
Yes.
Ms. McGee?
Yes.
Rogan C. is a yes. Motion carries. Next item.
Next item is audience participation for agenda items only.
Thank you. Members of the audience who want to address City Council this evening may do so by filling out an audience form located at the right side of the stage. This is for agenda items only. Everyone has 3 minutes. Ms. Harris, you are up.
Hi, my name is Lori Harris, and I started getting involved with City Council about 7 years ago because of marijuana in my neighborhood that was inappropriately being grown in an empty house. I know that we've moved past these things, sort of. I still have that problem in my neighborhood, but I wanted to talk about the administrative hearing and the request of Sozo Health to appeal an administrative ruling denying their renewal of their marijuana license. My understanding is Sozo Health was given an attestation inappropriately by someone in the city administration and opened their business there. And I do recall that there were some issues with them maintaining the odor, like following the guidelines to be compliant. I don't know all the issues, but I certainly hope that they don't get their way and get to have their license. And I'm tired of the marijuana industry bullying the city to get what they want. Thank you.
Thank you. That is the end of audience for agenda items.
Next item is 10A, presentation by Plant Moran.
Good evening, Council. My name is Bill Brickey with Plant Moran, and with me today is my associate Josh Eady, and we're here to talk about the audit for the year ended June 30, 2024. The deliverables that we have related to the audit that you would have received, we have the annual comprehensive financial report, the audit of federal awards, which is our audit of your grants. We have our report to Mayor and Council, and finally we have the graph presentation, which we'll go through in just a moment. So we have covered all of these documents in detail with management. Our goal tonight is to provide you a high-level summary of those items and also address any questions that you may have. Before we get started, just want to take a brief moment and really thank your entire finance team for their assistance throughout the audit. The audit does take about 3 months from start to finish, and we appreciate all the assistance that they provide throughout that process. So I always like to point out that the city does continue to prepare an annual comprehensive financial report, which is more than required by the state of Michigan. Your financial statements are submitted to the Michigan Government Finance Officers Association. They review them and provide you an award. And for the 19th year, the city will receive that award. And to me, it really just shows the city's commitment to overall quality financial reporting. So when you look at that document that you have, the financial statements, it will look different than a lot of other communities who just do a basic financial statement. Included in that document is our opinion on your financial statements. As your auditor, that's really my primary deliverable to you. It's on page 1. The city did receive an unmodified audit opinion, again in the current year, which essentially means the financial statements are in compliance with all the rules and regulations and can be relied upon. So it's really the highest level of assurance that we can provide on a financial statement. I want to talk just for a minute on the other audit report we have. So in addition to the financial statement audit, we also performed an audit of the city's compliance with federal grants. So you have a report that's titled Federal Awards Supplemental Information. So during the current year, the city did receive just over $4.7 million in federal grants, and the details of those grants can be seen on page 7 of that report. So we specifically tested the city's compliance with the COVID-19 coronavirus state and local recovery funds. Those are what we often refer to as the ARPA grant. and the Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS grant. Pleased to report that our testing on that, we did not identify any non-compliance issues. So our report that you have there just basically says you complied with all the rules and regulations related to those grants and spent the money appropriately. So we have no findings on our issues with the grants. Also included in that report on page 11, we did identify one financial statement audit finding in the current year. So during our audit testing, we did identify certain adjustments that required changes to be made to the numbers that were provided to us. The adjustments are related to changes in the capital asset calculation that's included in the financial statements, and some adjustments to grant revenue and receivables. So when we identified these items, brought it to management, they made the required corrections. So that's why we're able to provide you the unmodified audit opinion. But we are required to report that issue to you, given your role as counsel. And so that's really what that finding on that page relates to. I will point out that there were some significant retirements in the finance office this year and some change in duties and responsibilities. And I really think those findings really just related to some of the transition and people kind of getting up to speed in the department on their new responsibilities. But again, the details of that are on page 11 of that document. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Josh. We're going to cover the end of audit letter and finally wrap up by going through some of the financial highlights in the graphs.
Thank you. So as Bill said, I'm going to cover the end of audit letter. So this is the bookend to the letter that we would have sent to this body before the audit began. And so this letter can be very perfunctory if nothing came up. And so that is the case this year, with the exception of the finding that Bill mentioned earlier in terms of the entry that we had to make there. So other than that, the audit went very well, so there are a lot of no's in here. So no major disagreements with management, no difficulties, things like that that you would expect and hope to see no's too. The rest of the letter, it does include some legislative and informational items, so I will leave these to you to read at your leisure. If you have any questions on those, we'd be happy to help discuss those as well. The other item then in front of you is the slide deck. So this is the graph presentation. This is going to cover the financials at a very high level, but if you have any questions, happy to address those. So if we go to the next slide, this shows the general fund revenues over 4 years. And as you can see, revenue increased 7.6% this year to $133,153,000. Largely that's due to increasing property tax revenue. So the first line there is up $4.3 million year over year, and that increased largely due to property tax values continuing to increase within the city of Warren. The other significant change there is investment income. That is within the other revenue line, that's the fifth line, which increased about $3.3 million in the current year. The other item that is not reflected here, but I did want to point out, is there is still about $17.9 million remaining to be spent of those ARPA funds. The next slide then shows total taxable value. Since property taxes are the most significant source of revenue for the city, this shows the change in the city's taxable value over 10 years. The blue line represents real property, the red line represents personal property, and the green line is the combination of the two. Now, this value fell from its high in 2008 with the rest of the housing market, but otherwise has been steadily increasing. But keep in mind that this increase is limited to the lower of 5% or inflation on existing property due to the Headley Amendment. So in order for these values to recover, it will take some time or significant new construction to continue to drive these values up further than they're going at the moment. The next slide then is the other side of the coin. So this is the general fund expenditures over the last 4 years. And you can see that expenditures in the current year increased 5.4% to $126,267,000 in the current year. And most of that is due to increases in public safety, which is up $5.2 million in the current year. And much of that is due to increased headcount and wages, as well as increased capital outlay in fiscal year 2024. The next slide shows general fund expenditures for this year just in another format. So this shows the breakdown by percentage. And you can see here that public safety continues to be the largest expense category, with 71 cents for every dollar in the general fund going to public safety, which is consistent with prior years and shows the city's continued commitment to public safety. The next slide shows general fund expenditures compared to the budget on a budgetary basis. So the general fund expenditures finished the year approximately $31.1 million under budget, in which all departments remained within budget. So the variances were largely due to the timing of equipment purchases and variances in positions. Then the last slide shows the general fund balance of $95 million. This is an increase of $6 million from fiscal year 2023. Now, of this, unassigned fund balance of $24.3 million represents about 19% of fiscal year 2024 expenditures, and the remaining is assigned for various other future expenditures within the city. And with that, we'll take any questions.
Colleagues.
Madam Chair, I would make a motion to receive and file.
Motion. Support, anyone?
Support Lafferty with discussion.
Discussion, Mr. Lafferty.
And me as well, okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Lafferty might get most of our questions out, so.
I was limited to, Mr. Fox told me I was limited to 22 questions this year. So, good evening, sir. Thank you for being here tonight. Great reading as always. To start with your letter, your introductory letter, page 3, you have a comment that the most sensitive estimates affecting the financial statements were the city's portion of the environmental remediation and post-closure care reported by the South Macomb Disposal Authority and the net pension liability and net OPEB liability. Can you speak to the sensitivity? What's significant about that? Why is that called out?
So those are called out. So obviously when we do accounting, we don't actually know the answer to your retiree healthcare liability, for example. So you hire an actuary and they do their calculations to come up with what do they think the value of that benefit that you're going to provide in the future is going to be. So because it's not a number that we can absolutely tie out to an invoice, it's an estimate. And so what we do when there's situations with estimates is we test the inputs and the logic behind the calculation there. And so because those numbers are so large, we have to call it out that those are significant estimates, because you're recording expenses every year as that liability goes up, even though you're not going to pay them out until, people may retire 30 years from now and you may pay that benefit. So all that's meant to do is say, not everything in here is a known number. Some things have to be estimated, and what we do is we audit the way you estimate that or pay a third party to estimate it.
Thank you. Moving on to page 7, you have a comment about undercapitalization thresholds, and that it may be a good time for the city to reevaluate the capitalization thresholds related to federal grant compliance. And given the finding, did you have any additional insight on that particular line?
I think our main point there is obviously when it comes to what you capitalize, that is the city's decision point. So you could, you could buy a microphone and that's going to last 5 years, so you could capitalize it. But if it costs $50, that might not be the most efficient thing to track. And so we would just think it's an appropriate time, based on some of the federal changes of what they require you to capitalize when you're spending federal grant money on it, to take a look at what is your threshold. Do you only capitalize things over $5,000, $10,000? What's the threshold? Obviously, given the size of the city's budget, you don't want to track every little thing, but it would be a good time just to take a look at what is the minimum value of a capital asset that you're going to capitalize and record on the books versus expense. So it really has nothing to do with approvals or anything like that. It's really more of an accounting task of when do you capitalize it and depreciate it over the estimated life.
Okay. All right. And then slightly below that, below the chart for pension and OPEB liabilities, the Our historical performance has remained quite steady. Are we presently positioned to continue our current funding approach, or should we consider alternatives? It seemed the reading suggested that there were alternatives to consider and that you were offering assistance.
So I think it's just important to again, continue to monitor these unfunded liabilities for both pension and healthcare. And, you know, you've really committed a lot of resources to, in many cases over the years, putting more into the retiree healthcare and the pension system than required by the actuary to get these numbers up. Plus, the last few years, we've seen obviously nice investment returns that have, again, increased your funding percentage there. So I just think it's an important thing to continue to look at what actuarial assumptions are used to determine what you're required to put in, and then certainly it's your decision whether you want to put in that amount or an increased amount. And so, you know, you really have made a lot of, like you said, positive progress in funding these liabilities, you know, over the years. And I know that's not a, you know, easy decision to make. So I think we pointed out just to say, because this is such a substantial item for the city's budget and such a substantial liability, it's just something to make sure that you're looking at budget time to figure out, you know, should we put in more than required, or are we comfortable with following the actuary's recommendation? Because if you follow what the actuary says, you will get funded eventually. It's just looking at what assumptions are they using to come up with that number, and are you comfortable with the time frame in which you'll be funding those liabilities?
Thank you. Moving into the audit, page 7, under management discussion and analysis. At year-end general fund expenditures, under budgetary highlights. At year-end general fund expenditures were almost $31 million under budget. And this was, great note, it was due to careful spending by department leaders and delayed capital equipment purchases. In my professional career, one of the metrics that I'm held accountable for is how close to an estimate on a particular project, a contract, did I arrive at, either at on a quarterly basis, mid-year, or at the end of the year. And I was curious, is being $31 million under budget a good indicator? I know we manage very well. Mr. Fox, Mr. Knapp, and Ms. Battle keep it, you know, run a tight ship. I'm curious if we should be focusing on, you know, narrowing that field. Should we be a little bit more conservative at budget time and pulling back 10-15%?
I would tend to agree with you. Typically, you know, I would like to see, you know, that a little tighter, where again, you're closer to what you budgeted, because obviously when you adopt a budget, that's what you want to have happen. And I think a lot of it, you know, could come down to, you know, taking a look at budget amendments throughout the year and seeing if there should be more amendments taken, so that when you get to the end of the year, maybe that number's a little closer to actual. Now, you know, certainly we understand that a lot of the things that you wanted to do, you know, with projects and things like that, you weren't able to do just related to, you know, the backstock of the market, and it's hard to get, you know, construction projects underway and things like that. But I tend to agree that, you know, having a positive budget variance like that is a great thing from a financial standpoint. But when you adopt a budget, you know, you're trying to do certain things, and you want to accomplish, you know, certain service levels. So I think it would, you know, potentially be appropriate to look at those budget amendments more closely throughout the year, so at the end of the year you're closer than that.
Okay. And my second one was regarding the budget amendments, because I said that would having a more conservative approach would likely include an additional appropriation throughout the year. So you're going exactly where I was going to go with my second question, so thank you. Let's see here. And my second to last question, on page 43, and I'm not sure you can answer this. It may be a question for Mr. Fox, which doesn't have to be answered tonight. Under water and sewer bonds, last sentence, the series bonds, 5401 at June 30, 1.1 million and change. However, this issue is subject to 40% principal forgiveness at closeout of construction and is reflected in the balance statement. I was curious about the principal forgiveness and why we had that. And I'm not sure that that's a question for you to answer and perhaps more for the controller.
I think I would punt that one to the controller. I don't know off the top, I can't remember off the top of my head why you're getting that forgiveness. I'm sure it was
Okay.
part of the original issuance. Rick, I don't know if you.
Oops. Richard Fox, City Controller.
Good evening.
I have to punt on that one tonight, too. I don't know off the top of my head what that's for, but I'd be happy to supply you a report on it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then finally, on page 11 of the federal awards supplement, and you spoke to the finding and noted that it had already been corrected. And my question was a remediation plan from a risk modeling, was there a remediation plan that was presented to you by the city, noting the revisions to the process, and then was that reviewed and then accepted by you? Was there some sort of letter exchange?
So we do receive a corrective action plan from the city. We do not test that what you say you're going to do, you did. I think what we do is, next year we do our work and, kind of test everything all over again. But the city is required to submit the corrective action plan as part of this document. So that is uploaded to the state and things like that. But again, we don't necessarily test that it was corrected right now, but we will in next year's audit because again, we'll be looking at this. And I would point out just on this finding, just to put some context around this. So the expectation is when we come out to do the audit is the numbers were provided, we don't make any changes to it. We don't find any errors, we don't find any issues, which is a very low bar from an audit standpoint because it can be quite common when you're looking at the sheer dollar amount and number of transactions that the city has that we find things. And so this is a situation where we did find some errors, brought them to the city's attention, they totally corrected it. And as I mentioned before, there were some new people in some positions this year doing this for the first time. And so our suggestion was, maybe a little more review of that work by those newer people. And I think that's the plan. But again, we didn't test that actually happened yet, but we will in next year's audit.
Okay. But in light of the unmodified opinion, one couldn't ask for better management than that.
Correct.
So, findings happen, we manage them, and it's a good thing. That's why you're here. You're here to help us ensure that the numbers are right all the way through. So finding is not a bad thing.
Right.
But, on top of an unmodified opinion, I couldn't be happier with it. So, well done, thank you, Mr. Fox. Excellent job, as always, you and your team.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Secretary Moore.
Thank you. Madam Chair, it's probably for Mr. Fox. Can any of the expenditures being under budget be explained by transferring any of those expenditures to the DDA, perhaps?
No, basically, the largest share of that was, as you recall, the equipment that was put in the budget this year, or the last year, was substantial. And so then we turned around and did a bond issue in order to finance those. So the timing of the equipment purchases then got postponed.
Okay.
And that's why
Okay, so it
large
wasn't,
amount.
it was just because we paid for them in another way?
Exactly.
So we still, okay, all right,
Yep.
that's what I thought. Another question, I noticed in, I think it was page 1, and this is something where we're probably not going to have an answer today, and maybe we can have a discussion later, because it probably goes deeper than us today. But the fines and fees show, or licenses and permits show a 12% decrease. And that's sort of a red flag to me that we have to watch that, because that looks like development is down and things like that. So I'd like to maybe see where we're at this year with that, to sort of track that, just to get an idea if that's sort of a harbinger of things. Also, Mr. Fox and I actually talked about this earlier this week. I found in the charter a timeline for the independent audit that's, and I'll talk with Mr. Schroeder about this, and it's very unreasonable to meet that. So if that's the case, if that timetable is in the charter, maybe that's something that we will discuss in the charter review to get that more in line with what's reasonable. So we'll look at that later and make sure I'm right about that.
Right.
Thank you.
Any additional?
Madam President, if you'd indulge me.
Mr. Noonan.
Let's see. On page 3 of the letter, it says that corrected and uncorrected misstatements. It ended with including increasing the capital assets within the governmental activities for assets acquired during the current year by approximately $5.1 million. That seems like a lot of money to me. Can you explain what that was about a little bit? Because I didn't really understand it too well. Professional standards require us to accumulate all known and likely misstatements identified during the audit. Why was there a misstatement to the tune of $5 million?
So this is the situation that directly relates to the finding that we talked about earlier. So this was the primary point of that. But essentially what happened is the way the accounting works for the city is, you buy capital assets, and those are expensed as part of the budget process. But then there's another section of this financial statement where those items you buy are then capitalized for this report, although they're budgeted as expenses. So there were items that were purchased and all of that went well. It's just when the city goes back through all of the capital items they're purchased and puts them into their fixed asset module, there was about $5 million of asset additions that were not in there, that they were missed as part of the review process. Some of those assets related to items that were purchased by the DDA, but then given to the city as city assets. So really it was more of an accounting function. It wasn't like you didn't pay $5 million or you missed $5 million of expenses. It really was the year-end closing process where you take the items you bought, figure out what should be capitalized, and put them into your module.
Would you say that that has to do with the depreciation of the assets for having been used for a given amount of time or something like that?
This was actually before they get depreciated. This was the original identification of items that you purchased, what should be capitalized. So it really related to that process of what did we buy, how much are we going to capitalize versus expense. So it was that determination that the error happened where there was items that just weren't put into the fixed asset module as part of the year-end close process.
I thank you. I think that's about as clear as it's going to get for me.
Okay.
Which is to say, actually not very clear, but it's not your fault. It's I don't have enough background information on that in my head.
Right. So maybe I can explain a little. So I had an employee retire this year, and the other employee now that's doing that missed those DDA purchases. Didn't think that about the looking to the DDA for the purchases that they had. So the process that we implemented to correct that is I'm going to have another staff member review all these items that when they're capitalizing, have someone take a second look at everything so that we don't miss these items.
Oh, okay. I like that. Thank you. And then maybe this is along the same line. On page 8, there were significant GASB proposals worth watching. The Revenue and Expense Recognition Project aims to develop a comprehensive accounting. We strongly encourage the city to monitor developments with the standard. The GASB has issued a preliminary views document that proposes a new categorization framework that replaces the exchange, non-exchange transaction notion with a 4-step categorization process for classifying a transaction. So would that be like all the codes of the city have to change for how they categorize things? I was going...
So if you're thinking about the chart of accounts and the way you budget, this should not affect that at this moment. The This is a proposal. This is not issued yet. The GASB is still working on the final wording of this and exactly what it will mean. This could be a significant change into the way this document looks in terms of the way we're presenting things.
Okay.
But it should not, at least at this point, affect kind of the economics of the city. It should not affect the way that you're looking at things on a budgetary basis on a day-to-day process.
Okay.
But if that does, we will definitely be having those
So it's
conversations.
not a
with Rick.
drastic change to the controller's office's process?
Yeah, in terms
Oh,
of the way
that's
that
great.
this all gets reported.
Okay, it just, I read that and I got scared.
Sure. This has the potential to be a rather significant change to the way that this report looks. But like I said, that's still in process. They're still making changes, so we don't know exactly where that's going to land.
So, thank you. My last thing, you know that $31 million of less spending than the budget? I think it might have to do with the way the city is looking at fiscal conservancy. And I'm a fiscal conservative. I like to be taking in more money than we're spending all the time. And it's interesting, I don't know whether this is, like, I think Jonathan, Councilman Lafferty was speaking to having a good fund balance. And I don't know what our fund balance is exactly in percentage terms. It's probably in here somewhere. But do you know, happen to know what that is offhand?
So are you talking about the percentage of unassigned fund balance that is represented by, as it relates to the current year expenditures?
Yeah, for the general fund?
Yeah, so that's 19% this year, that the unassigned fund balance
Okay.
represents about 19% of current year expenditures.
19%. So that, it seems to me that that's a pretty high fund balance. Like, maybe we could lighten up a little bit in terms of going ahead and spending money for salaries a bit more, maybe. But I was looking at this City of Warren fiscal year ended June 30, 2024 annual comprehensive financial report. And under economic outlook on page 3, going into page 4, at the top of page 4, really, it's talking about the inflationary effect of federal government assistance for citizens and businesses over the past year. While needed, has energized additional government intervention in the economy through interest rate hikes. The city needs to continue to be vigilant and responsive to economic changes to avoid impacting essential services provided to our citizens and businesses. The many challenges of a weakening economy may force the city to cut future expenditures through staffing level reductions and labor contract savings. It seems like we're already doing that to a high degree, and that would probably account for the $31 million that we're, you know, that our actual budget is below, what was budgeted?
Again, the largest portion of that was the capital expenditures. The other area that were savings were vacant positions.
I'm sorry, I didn't really hear you because you're not really speaking very well into the microphone as far as I know.
Okay, so as I stated before, the largest portion of the difference was capital expenditures for equipment.
Okay,
And so that was, so I'm thinking somewhere around $18 million. And then the other balances are just, each department didn't spend all their dollars, which is what we want. We want them to manage their funds and save the city as much as possible. And probably the biggest in each department was vacancies that they had within their department.
I guess I'm not trying to say that it's good or bad. I'm just saying I think that our overall philosophy is that we're in fairly tight economic times, and we need to be very fiscally conservative. I think that's the consensus.
I don't
And I
have
think that should be
I
a
don't have an
major
issue with
finding
that.
of this, so I'm saying it. Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? I have one or two questions. It's the 24.3 million that we increase in revenue, tax revenue, investment earnings, and grant revenue. It's on page 6. Roughly, Rick, what is the breakdown of that 24? I assume a lot of it is tax revenue because property
Yeah.
taxes or so.
Property tax revenues, and then we recognize some of the grant revenue as, grants as revenue. And then we did have a big increase in the interest income because the rates have been up and we've captured, you know, a good amount of money in interest income because of the dollars that are sitting invested in the banks.
Okay, thank you. And then my other question is, The 95 million fund balance, some of it, what was the assigned amount for this year?
Well, I can actually give you a breakdown of that. I mean, off the top of my head, but we have various items that we assign. And so I'll give you an example. The council during the budget said you wanted to have $5 million set aside for the home program with the down payment assistance. So that's one of the assigned items in fund balance. The other thing that council wanted reserve was $2,750,000 for Parks and Recreation. So that's another item which I'll actually send you an email with those items that are assigned. But those are just two examples.
Okay, thank you, because it is often talked about, we have this very large fund balance, but I don't think people realize that a lot of the money is committed
Correct.
already for a
And-
future project or a future year, like the fire truck where we have to order it 2 or 3 years in advance. That money gets assigned in the fund balance. So when I look at this, the fact that we only have, I don't know, about 20 million unassigned is more concerning to me than the 95 million, right? Like 20 million is not that much money unassigned for a city of our size with a budget of our size. Is that an accurate?
Well, I mean, I think the unassigned, percentage being around 20% is very adequate. I mean, what you're trying to do is maintain a few months of operating just in case you have an emergency. But the key to fund balance is that is like a one-time item. So it's for a capital item or a expense that's going to happen one time. You certainly don't want to increase wages and then have a $3 or $4 million increase one year. That's going to be every year, and it's going to keep going up, and your fund balance will be wiped out.
Yeah.
So it's really more of a one-time item where you got something that you got to purchase, like a capital, and you use fund balance to do that.
Okay, thank you. That was the only questions I have. Anyone else have additional questions? No. Okay, we have a motion to receive and file. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much.
Thank
Next
you.
item.
Next item is 10B, resolution in support of DOT's RAISE program. I think this was your item.
Can I make a motion?
Pardon me?
Can I make a motion?
No, do you want, okay, you want to explain, I didn't know if you wanted to
Yeah, I can
explain
explain
it.
it. So the county road department reached out about a letter of support for development of DeQuinder Road to apply for a grant from 696 to 14 Mile. And they requested us submit a letter of support for their joint application. DeQuinder is a huge sore spot in the community as far as construction. It's both owned by or oversaw by Oakland and Macomb County. It becomes a whole thing. So the letter is to submit with a grant that is due before the next time we meet. And so we're adding it at the table so that the County Roads Department can submit the grant in time with our letter of support.
Motion to approve.
Support Lafferty.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Yes, you want to say all in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Another sad note, Kathy Stevens, a Warren resident, wife of former Councilman Scott Stevens, passed away this past Saturday. We'd like to extend our condolences to her entire family, and a moment of silence, please.
Thank you.
On another note, last night, we had a very productive meeting. Council, members of the administration, police and fire, some residents were there, discussing the unhoused or homeless situation in light of, the cold weather coming up. And as part of the discussion, one of the lieutenants mentioned that there are certain times of the day where shelters close. They may take, their intake period may be from 7 to 9 p.m. Some shelters only take men, some maybe take women, some take women and children, some take families. But not everyone does everything, and sometimes places are full that do one or the other. And sometimes the only option police officers have is to take whatever population that is to local motels. And I have actually a list here, and if anybody is so inclined, if you have the means to do so, and you would like to help with this problem and keep people out of the cold, you know, on the streets, and it's gonna be freezing the next couple of weeks, that would be much appreciated if you would be so kind to go to one of these hotels and perhaps purchase a gift certificate or, you know, gift card, or make a, drop off funds to the police department for that benefit. You could contact any of us on council, and we would find a way to get whatever help you have to the right people. You could take to the mayor's office, I'm sure, the treasurer's office, and that will get to where it needs to go. And the, just a suggestion, the hotels, the Quality Inn at 30900 Van Dyke, that is from $50 to $75 a night. The Holiday Express on 11,511 Mile, that's $129 a night. And then America's Best Inn, 25800 DeQuinder, that's $65 a night. At this point, we'll also put these facilities on the council's Facebook page, or you can call the council office and we can give you that information. But that would be much appreciated if you want to help. That's a great way to help. It's going to get awful cold, and I just hate the idea of people being on the street. We all do, and that's what we spent a lot of time last night. We don't have all the answers yet, but we're working on it. And I think we had really, really productive meeting last night, and I wish we could handle everything like we did last night. We could get a lot farther, I think, in our goals. So thank you very much, and those are all the announcements for me.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Any other announcements? Okay, I have two. There's a point-in-time count, which is an annual census required by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, which is being coordinated by Macomb Action, I believe, in the county. It is on Wednesday, January 22nd at 7 to 11 p.m. Volunteers will go and count folks who are homeless or unhoused, collect that information. It helps determine funding and a variety of other things at the state and federal level, helps us locally understand the scope of the problem. If you can't volunteer to go out or don't want to, you can help volunteer care bags like hygiene products, blankets, things like that, that will be distributed as a part of the point in time. You can go online, point in time in Macomb County, and you can find the link to volunteer. There is, second announcement is the planning department and the city has presented their preliminary plans for the active mobility plan. While the open house has concluded, the city is still gathering public input through the project website. There is also a open house presentation, and you can share feedback via the online survey. You can go to walkbike.info/Warren for more information. Sorry, I have one more notification. The Crime Commission is collecting donations for, no, I've forgotten it. Who's on the Crime Commission?
Councilman Dwyer, I believe.
They're collecting something during January, the month of January? I'm drawing a blank now.
Not to my knowledge.
I will share it next week. Thank you, because I can't find it. That is all the.
Angela, text us.
I-
The other Angela.
Madam
Middle school.
President,
Yes,
the Crime Commission has boxes to collect
thank you.
coats and mittens and things like that, and I'm trying to remember where all the locations are.
The community center was one,
Okay?
and I think one of the libraries, but I'm
The
unfortunately.
main library here at
Yeah.
the Civic Center?
And it's Civic Center. Thank you. We cobbled together that announcement. Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Any other announcements? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to the next item.
Next item is 11A, which is an administrative hearing, request of Sozo Health, Inc. I don't know if this is receive and file. Mr. Schroeder?
I think motion to table, we have.
Motion to table.
Madam President,
Mr. Lafferty?
before I make a motion, unless you're making the motion to
I just
table,
made
I'd
it,
like-
nobody seconded.
Okay, so I'd like to introduce this because this is a little different than what we've done in the past. And through the wisdom of Mr. Schroeder, last month at our last meeting, you appointed me to conduct a meeting between the attorneys for the city of Warren, representatives from the building department, public service, and then the attorney for Sozo and one of their representatives. I chaired the meeting, and when I opened the meeting, I made it very clear. There were no decisions being made. It was fact-finding, and it was to go through the detail on both sides. I was not acting as a judge and jury. I was simply going to collect the information and bring it back to council in a full report with a recommendation. Mary, I think the totality of the meeting was nothing short, almost just short of 3 hours long. We met, it was a very lengthy meeting, and there was a lot of detail shared. I can only imagine, had we held that meeting here tonight, we would, based on all of us listening and asking questions, we could have all gone out to breakfast tomorrow morning, because we would have still been here. With respect to what was brought forward, it was realized by both parties that the issue that was requested of us as an appeal, an administrative ruling denying the renewal of a marijuana license, was not really the issue at hand, and there were some underpinning issues that needed to be resolved first. And so Mr. Schroeder, the attorney for the city of Warren, and the attorney for Sozo are in the works of a resolution that resolve this issue, take it away from an administrative hearing, and will take it through a series of other steps that need to be exhausted first. And so from my standpoint, I have exhaustive notes that I've taken. They are not ready for presentation tonight to you, but as promised, I will deliver my notes to the council after they have been cleaned up. There were, like I said, 3 hours worth of notes. Needs a little finesse before I present them. I have some high standards to follow. And with that, a motion to table is in order, and that will resolve the issue for this evening.
Do you have anything to add, Mr. Schroeder? No. Okay. I made the motion to table.
I will second the motion to table.
We'll call the question, yes is to table. Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan?
Yes.
Ms. McGee?
Yes to table.
Rogan C. is a yes. Motion carries. Items tabled.
Next item is 12A, which was tabled 12/17/2024, proposed resolution authorizing quitclaim deed to City of Warren Tax Increment Finance Authority for real properties at 7600 and 7608 Continental, Warren, Michigan, consideration and adoption of a resolution.
Excuse me, what did you say at the end?
I'm sorry?
Did you make a motion?
No,
Oh, okay.
I did not.
We need a motion
It's
to remove
tabled.
it from the table before,
Oh, okay.
Motion to remove from the table.
thank you. Ms.
Support?
Thank you. All in favor to remove it from the table?
Aye.
No.
One no. Ms. Moore? Rogan C. is a yes. All right. Is there a motion for the purposes of discussion or
Motion
support?
to approve.
Thank you.
Motion, support with discussion?
Discussion, Mr. Noonan.
Yes, thank you. While I was reading through this, this is about the Tifa looking to get the two properties from the city of Warren at 7600 and 7608 Continental, Warren, Michigan. And let's see, I'm here on page 486 of our agenda, if anyone wants to follow me. The project is eligible for GAP funding with the grant from the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, MEDC, in an amount of $1.2 to $1.8 million. The TIFA wants those two properties conveyed, and it would help the sale and project development and the revitalization of the Van Dyke Corridor, the Van Dyke Corridor plan. And then, let's see, I put it in my, over here. Page 486 of our packet presents the sales of these two properties to the TIFA, anticipating all that I just said. But then on page 491, that's the grant from MEDC to help create a wonderful Ascension My Health urgent care facility. But the June 7, it says the June 17, 2024 letter from MEDC, and then look to page 492, requires a letter be signed and dated no later than June 24th, 2024. And page 492, so that documentation can be complete by July 31st, 2024, or else other consequences will ensue. So I'm wondering, what's the deal here? Has the Warren Office of Economic Development blown this opportunity? Can it be repaired? I don't know what the case is, and has the Warren Office of Economic Development already acquired that grant? And now is looking kind of retroactively to get this. The letter wasn't signed in our document, so it didn't look to me like the grant had been gotten.
Good evening, sir. Happy New Year. Tom Pomerito, Economic Development Coordinator. To answer your question, the grant has been awarded. We have milestone meetings continually with the MEDC, and we are on track. We're actually ahead of track with their milestones. Our next phase is to get site plan approval, which we're hoping to get on the next Planning Commission meeting. Part of the process is to combine what is right now 6 properties. 3 of them that run along Van Dyke that are commercial. There's 1 and 3 that run along Continental. Of the 6 properties, 2 of them are titled in the city of Warren. The other 4 are titled in Warren Tifa. As our assessor says, same pants, different pockets. They're all owned by the city, essentially. But in order to combine them at the county is asking them to all be in one entity. So what we're asking for is to simply transfer those 2 lots to Tifa. Tifa will then finish the site plan approval, and then with all the proper documents being finished, we will then sell the property to the My Health people so they can invest and build the building.
So the dates that looked like the obligations that needed to occur by these dates actually did occur, even though the documents in our agenda didn't show signatures or dates signing off on them, like.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly which document, because there's a lot of them, but we are compliant with the MEDC, so I'm sure that document was signed. That's primarily the
Okay. Well, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that you've haven't blown getting that?
Yeah, no.
Okay,
No,
because
we're
it
on
looked
track.
like,
That's the good
that, and then
news.
I was wondering if, and, so there are a lot of questions rose around for me over that. In general, I like the project. I think that's something that's gonna be good for the Van Dyke corridor, the Tifa area. I don't know what the city council might need. I feel an interest in, like, just tabling this and forgetting about it. And I don't think that that's what you want. And
Well,
so
that
I'm
would-
curious as to
That would then throw us
answer.
behind on our milestones with the state, and we probably will lose the grant.
I
If
can't
we-
hear you very well.
If we continue to table this and we can't combine the lots and finish the site plan approval, that will throw us behind our milestones with the
Well,
state.
yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
so-
kind of, I guess it's, I don't know, what's next, city council? I guess I yield.
Madam Chair?
Thank
Madam
you.
President.
Ms. Moore?
You know, with all due respect, Mr. Bomarito, I think part of the reason this was tabled last time is you were not here to answer questions that the council had.
Yeah, I heard
Oh,
that thing. Yeah.
So it's, I
Okay.
don't think it's on us about that. My concern is that we are transferring property with a value from the city to the Tifa. And I believe that if Tifa is selling that, that money should go back to the general fund. 'Cause
That's fine. I've been before this body 4 or 5 times about different transfers like this. We just did it, we're working on one for the fire station right now.
Yeah.
We did one a while back for a parking lot behind what's the old Louis Bar. So this is not out of the ordinary, what we're asking. The sale price of the property in total is $5,000. So I'm sure the Tifa board would be happy to
Yeah.
reimburse
I mean,
the
it might have
city.
happened a million times, but I'm only one person, and we get thousands of documents that come across, and none of us can look at every single line item, and we miss things. We miss something about, at DDA expenditures and City Hall on furniture. We totally missed that mistake that was made. And we are not perfect, and, we can just do the best job we can. I just want to make sure that we're following, because the DDA funds the Tifa, so, usually, right?
Sure.
Right? Why do we transfer money? Well, we don't transfer any money. We stopped that.
Yeah, Richard Fox, City Controller. So the Tifa actually has its funds, and they capture their dollars to DDA. But we did, the DDA can
Right.
make contributions to the
Okay.
Tifa. Yes.
Okay, all right. I stand corrected. All right, I just want to make sure that the fund balances.
Yeah, and if the property's sold and the 5,000, I mean, I'm sure it'll get back into the general
Yeah.
fund. and
Okay,
we'll make
thank
sure
you.
that-
That was my issue.
Thank you.
And I think to clarify for Mr. Noonan, the document that you were referring to was dated in July. That's 6 months ago. So when it had the dates of when the,
Yeah, it's confusing.
right, and it probably should have been updated to make it clear for, yeah.
Okay. Madam President, I'm curious as to what the next thing would be for this.
Mr. Lafferty has the
Sure.
floor after Ms. Moore.
Okay.
Mr. Lafferty?
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Bomarito.
Good evening.
And I'm not certain I heard an answer to Councilman Noonan's initial question. Did the city receive the grant funding from the MEDC?
No, the grant funding goes to the end user. Grant funding is on milestones. Once they get 50% completion on construction, they'll be able to draw 50% of the grant loans. Once the project is completed, they'll be able to draw the other 50% of the grant.
Okay, so we're acting as the necessary, or the TIF is acting as the entity between the MEDC and the borrower.
Yes, sir. Our office did a overall 5 requests for 5 properties for these grants. And we were awarded one of the 5 properties. So we acted as a joint applicant with the individual landowners, supporting the project. And so Tifa kind of owns, what we thought, all of the land, but we're missing two. But, so we're acting as trying to kickstart the development. So we worked with the My Health people. So the grant is technically to the My Health people. And like I said, it's only paid out after they expend the funds.
Understood. All right, and then just to the zoning of the properties on Continental, I would imagine those are zoned R1P?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and the properties fronting Van Dyke are commercial?
Correct.
So are you going to have a uniformed rezoning proposal?
No, I think the plan is to combine the lots and leave them the way they are, because the way the site plan is drawn, the 3 Continental lots are parking. So the R1P is a parking designation. And then the 3 along Van Dyke are commercial, and that's where the building will sit. And then I think there's a couple of variances because there's living above the building.
Okay, I'm not so certain I would agree with you on that.
Yeah, that was planning's suggestion, planning and zoning, so.
Okay, well, if planning's, because the tenor of planning has been along with the master plan to uniformly zone properties in lot combinations of this type, so along with our universal zoning strategy. And so I just find it counterintuitive that they would leave it that way. I'll follow up, Mr. Worth, on that.
Yeah, I think it's primarily because it's zone parking, and that's what it's planned to be used for.
But you're not doing an official lot combination, though?
Yeah, it's a MZ, mixed zone.
A mixed zone,
Yeah.
okay. All right, and then, thank you, Mr. Bomarito. Ms. Moore, did you want an amendment to the resolution for the transfer of $5,000?
Just to make sure it goes back to the general fund.
All right, so I will propose an amendment to the, therefore it is resolved that the City of Warren authorizes the transfer of its interest in properties to the Tax Increment Finance Authority, represented by a transfer of $5,000 from the Tax Increment Finance Authority to the City of Warren General Fund, which are legally described as follows.
Support?
Thank you. Mr. Noonan, you previously supported, so
Okay.
do you support that amendment?
I do.
Okay, and to answer your question, Mr. Lafferty made a motion, you made a support to approve this item. So we're gonna vote to approve.
Good.
Folks will vote to approve or not approve this particular item.
Excellent.
Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, I will call the question. Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan?
Yes.
Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Ms. McGee?
Yes.
Rogan C. is a yes. Motion carries. Next item.
Next item is 12B, request from MedStar Ambulance to renew annual license for operation of ambulance services within the City of Warren. So moved.
Support Lafferty.
Thank you. Discussion, anyone? Hearing none, I will call the question. Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan?
Yes.
Ms. McGee?
Yes.
Rogan C. is a yes. Motion carries. Next item.
12C, request from Universal Macomb Ambulance Service to renew annual license for operation of ambulance services within the City of Warren. So moved.
Support Dwyer.
Discussion, anyone? Hearing none, I will call the question. Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan?
Yes.
Ms. McGee?
Yes.
Rogan C. is a yes. Motion carries. Next item.
Next item is 13A, Council Secretary Mindy Moore, discussion and reappointment of one council representative to serve on the Planned Unit Development Committee. Motion to approve with a placeholder for the person until I discuss this.
Support Lafferty.
Thank you, Mr. Lafferty. Discussion, Madam Secretary.
Thank you. The way the PUD is set up, council has some oversight that's a little particular for that situation. And from time to time, there are developments in that Heritage Village or in that area of the planned unit development that requires a council person I think in the last term, I think Mr. Green might have been the person. Doesn't come up very often, but we just need someone to go and meet probably once or twice. And I don't know if anybody's interested in it.
Madam President, I'm willing to sacrifice myself to the zone.
Okay. So then I would modify my motion to appoint Mr. Noonan to the PUD committee.
And they have a meeting coming up soon, right?
Yeah, I think it's it was moved to the 23rd, I believe.
Okay, I better go into my notes here.
Okay.
Mr. Lafferty, you supported that motion. Are you comfortable with the amendment?
Without objection.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, I will call the question. Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan?
Yep.
Ms. McGee?
Yes.
Rogan C. is a yes. Motion carries. Next item.
13B, Council Secretary Mindy Moore, discussion and reappointment of 2 council members to the Land Bank Authority Board of Directors. Motion to appoint Councilman Lafferty and Councilman Moore.
Support Lafferty.
Discussion, anyone? Hearing none, I will call the question. Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan?
Yep.
Ms. McGee?
Yes.
Rogan C. is a yes. Motion carries. Next item.
Next item is 13C, Councilmember Jonathan Lafferty, discussion and Mayor Stone response to land bank questions during the December 30th, 2024 news report on Fox 2 Detroit. So moved.
Support Lafferty with discussion.
Discussion, Mr. Lafferty.
Thank you. I was hoping for a quiet December 30th, 31st, and then Fox 2 rolled up in my driveway asking for comment on a news story relative to the land bank. And so I responded with some comments, and I was very surprised and by some of the comments offered by Mayor Stone, but in rewatching that news story, I was shocked by the callous response. And the reason why I wanted to bring this up was we really need to examine what happened here and what the true result was. And the fact of the matter is that the state of Michigan Land Bank had funding upwards of $1 million available to the city of Warren if they had an eligible land bank agreement. Eligible meaning the city council passed an intergovernmental agreement and it required the mayor's signature. Everything that we pass on these agendas, if it requires the mayor's signature, the mayor has a 96-hour period to veto those actions. If she disagrees with it for any reason, she has 96 hours to veto it. If she doesn't veto, it means she consents to that action. Well, she didn't. And so after our August 27th meeting, that agreement was sent to the mayor's office. The 96-hour period of veto expired, and she chose to let that agreement rot on her desk for over 100 days, signing it on December 10th. But by that time, it was too late. The eligibility period had ended, and the state funding, as far as Warren was concerned, evaporated. And along with that, $1 million could have jump-started an economic revitalization in the state land bank. Now with 2025 upon us, we're going to have to start over and apply for 2025 funding, but what a great position we could have been in. Mr. Fox, I'm sure, would have made room in the budget for $1 million of funds from the state of Michigan. But what I found most incredible was when the mayor came face to face with the camera and she was asked the question, did her inaction cost the city $1 million? She laughed and said, absolutely not. Ladies and gentlemen, she laughed. This is not a laughing matter. neither is lying. I don't find the loss of $1 million in state funding to be a laughing matter, but I do question one more item relative to this story. Citizens deserve the truth. Madam Secretary, has the council been presented with a resolution to receive funds from the state of Michigan and deposit them into an account for 2024?
No.
Have we authorized the opening of an account to receive any funds from the State Land Bank in 2024?
No.
Mr. Fox has not presented us with a resolution for $1 million from the state of Michigan. The mayor, plain and simple, the mayor had 6 months to ask questions. We started these discussions a year ago. We first presented this in March, and it was not until August when we approved the agreement. Where were those questions and concerns? Where were her requests for a conversation then? She was hoping to have a conversation. Well, 96 hours came and went, and then 100 days went by. There was nothing further the council could do, and that agreement that she signed 100 days later did not change between the end of August and December 10th when she finally penned her signature. So I want to clarify for the record that only one of two things can be true. One, the mayor is hiding $1 million of state land bank funding in her desk, or two, the mayor lied to the taxpayers of Warren. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Ms. Moore.
I see Mr. Bomarito there. Mr. Bomarito, I'm surprised that you weren't jumping up and down on the mayor's desk begging her to sign this, because of any department in the city, you are going to benefit probably the most from the actions of the land bank. It's going to make your job a lot easier. It's going to help economic development in the city. And I'm sure we're going to be working together very closely, in the next year on, economic development and whatever the land bank can do to help the city. So anyway, that's just my comment. Thanks.
I just had a note, because I went to look. I can't remember where the $1 million was, where we originally came up with that.
It's an email from Mr.
Yeah, so I'm gonna read the email, because I just went back to it. So thank you for contacting me related to the State Land Bank Authority Blight Elimination Program funding, SLBA. As you may know, in fiscal year 2023, Governor Whitmer and the Michigan Legislature appropriated $150 million to address blight across the state. $75 million of the funding came from the federal ARPA sources, the balance coming from the state general funds. SLBA allocated the funding in 4 rounds, with every state land bank receiving a minimum allocation of $700,000, the balance being competitive. All funds were initially allocated by June of this year. However, as proposed projects have moved forward, not all allocated funds were spent. Just last week, SLBA reallocated $2.2 million for blight projects to several of our local partner land banks. Obviously, as Warren has not officially formed a land bank, they were not considered for the funding. Although the original blight elimination program has been allocated, I have some confidences SLBA will receive several $1 million in additional blight funding early next year. Of course, Warren would need an active land bank to be eligible for those future funds. I've had multiple conversations with Representative McKinney about the funding opportunity for Warren, and have appreciated his support in the legislature. This is from the Executive Director of the Land Bank. So a minimum of $700,000 for blight-related programs. Just wanted to clarify that I don't know that $1 million, I think we've stuck to $1 million, but that wasn't communicated in anything that I've ever received. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Madam President.
Ms. McGee.
So if we weren't already established, we could not receive those funds. It sounds like that's what it's saying, the $700,000.
So this is dated November 19th. So we wouldn't have been able to receive them because the mayor wouldn't sign the land bank agreement. We would have been eligible, to Mr. Lafferty's point. I guess I'm clarifying that it wasn't, we did not get just a letter from the state of Michigan that says you're going to get $1 million. I think it's just important to clarify. While I agree with Mr. Lafferty, it is a shame that we've lost funding with this particular endeavor because we've waited so long. We were not guaranteed a particular pot of money, and that it stated specifically from the executive director of the land bank that we would have received potentially a minimum allocation of $700,000, and that this was for their blight elimination program funding specifically. Happy to forward this on to whomever wants it.
Madam Chair,
Mhm.
I think you had further conversations, maybe with Director Rivet.
I had many conversations with Director Rivet, Representative McKinney, our state representative, council president, council secretary. We were both involved in those conversations. I think there would have been a potential for up to $1 million. Certainly the $700,000. We just don't know. I had many conversations with Director Rivet in October, wondering if this thing was going to get signed. So he said he was holding back some money for Warren. Specifically said that, and it got to a point where it was getting late in the year that they had to disperse these monies to other communities because the agreement didn't get signed. It finally did get signed in mid-December, but by then they had to allocate these funds by the end of the year, especially the ARPA funds. There was that issue of, committing it by the end of
2024.
So we certainly did miss out. We can debate the exact dollar amount. It could have been $1 million. We didn't have a specific promise, but we certainly weren't eligible without that signature on the agreement, so.
But it would have been seed money
Yes.
to get us started. We wouldn't be behind. We would have, we would be able to start off this year with some funding. Now we're gonna have to scramble and get the funding. And it was my impression from the director that they are very excited about us having a land bank. And they want to help. This is they wanna, pardon me? Yeah, he grew up in Warren. So, yeah, I think we're gonna get a lot of support out of that department going forward. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Boyke.
question for Attorney, Mr. Schroeder. You said the funding up to $1 million or a minimum of 700,000, but in reality, it could be more than $1 million, correct? The bottom line with this, whether it's 700,000 or $2 million, we didn't get it because the mayor didn't sign it.
Right.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Motion to receive and file sufficient, Mr. Lafferty? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next item.
13G. Let me find my.
D.
Yeah. 13, all right, sorry. 13D, resolution approving proposed settlement in the matter of James Rush versus City of Warren, Macomb County Circuit Court, case number 2023-004248-NO, Michigan Court of Appeals number 373179, pursuant to the discussions held in closed session. So moved.
Support Lafferty.
Call the question. Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan?
Yes.
Ms. McGee?
Yes.
Rogan C. is a yes. Motion carries. Next item.
Next item is 13F, proposed settlement in the matter of Deborah Hutcherson versus City of Warren Senior Housing Commission, Macomb County Circuit Court, case number 2024-002029, pursuant to the terms discussed in closed session.
So moved.
Support.
I will call the question. Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan?
Yes.
Ms. McGee?
Yes.
Grogan C. is a yes. Motion carries. Next item.
Next item is 13F, resolution approving proposed pre-litigation dispute. Motion to, this is in the Wenzel case, motion to approve pursuant to the terms discussed by Ms. Michaels.
So moved.
Support.
Thank you. We'll call the question. Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan?
Yes.
Ms. McGee?
Yes.
Rogan C. is a yes. Motion carries. Next item.
Next item is 13G, which is a request to have the mayor declare a state of emergency. Motion to approve with discussion.
Support Lafferty.
Discussion, Madam Secretary.
Thank you. The weather forecast is calling for potential sub-zero temperatures with even colder wind chill temperatures on Sunday through Wednesday of next week. The city has experienced a growing problem with homelessness, and we do have local agencies available to assist. The City Council had a special committee meeting of the whole yesterday to review a number of proposed solutions. One of the major obstacles to addressing this problem is that our zoning ordinance does not recognize or allow for emergency shelters or homeless shelters. There was an analysis done that compared homeless shelters to hotels, which would require special land use approval and a hearing before the Planning Commission. We don't have time for this, therefore I am requesting that the City Council request the mayor to issue a state of emergency to help provide for the health and safety of those out in the extreme cold conditions, including allowing for temporary shelters in reasonable places without the necessity to obtain a special land use permit. Under the Emergency Management Act, the mayor can only declare an emergency for a 7-day period, but such an emergency declaration can continue beyond the 7 days. Therefore, I make a motion to approve any mayoral declaration of a local state of emergency for the purpose of the health and safety of individuals exposed to the extreme cold conditions in the city until the next council meeting on January 28, 2025, where we may consider any future action. This shall include the permission of emergency shelters in reasonable locations without the need to obtain any special land use permits. As part of that, I don't know if we want to add at this time that we need to visit our, the zoning, and I don't know if we send that to planning. Mr. Schroeder?
There was a thought that the zoning ordinance needs to be updated to properly classify what zoning districts under what conditions a emergency shelter can be operated. And that would have to start with planning and come back to council for final approval to amend the zoning ordinance. So perhaps a letter from the council office and, you know, to the mayor and the planning department requesting that this be undertaken. It will take time, you know, to do that. So I did do some research and see that other communities, especially larger cities, do address shelters, homeless shelters or emergency shelters in their zoning ordinance. We simply don't have it in our zoning ordinance. So someone, maybe it was the planning department, looked at it and said, well, it's like a hotel. Well, a hotel, you have to get all these different approvals, special land use. It's, you know, it's a business. It's, you know, there's all kinds of things, whereas an emergency shelter is addressing a different type of an issue. So I would recommend that. No, in addition, with this emergency declaration, we also discussed the issue of, you know, city funds going to nonprofits, and that certainly if a nonprofit is in the city and it is providing a service, the city could help under a contract or an agreement to provide a service to help with the health, safety, and welfare of those in the community, but not necessarily make a donation to a nonprofit. I don't know if you want to include that in your emergency declaration. You may want to include that so that there may be some ability to address that funding part as well.
To enter into a contract
Yeah.
with some group or entity to provide a service to our
provide a
residents, to
service.
our homeless
Yes.
population. Right, okay. So we send that to, and we probably can't get it done for this cold season through planning. I don't think there's enough time. This is January, it takes 15 days notice, but, you know, we're already talking about, you know, so this is for, probably for later in the winter months, you know, December of this year probably, and January, maybe we can have it done for the next cold season. But at least it'll get us on track for, make things easier next year for planning things. Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of things to discuss. There's a lot of issues. It's, you know, as we all know, there's no easy answer to any of this.
Just to clarify, if I may, just the part of the emergency is to allow the a temporary shelter or shelter to occur in a reasonable location, so they're not having to come get a special land use permit. So under the emergency circumstances, you're allowing for that to happen, but it has to be under reasonable circumstances. You know, we're not going to trespass or allow anything like that, but I reached out to a number of different attorneys in this area today, and it seems like this is our best route to actually give the city the ability to address the problem quickly. We just don't have time to amend the zoning ordinance.
Right, and we've got to do something by Sunday, basically, if we're going to do something.
I have a question, Mr. Schroeder, maybe you can answer. So we're approving in advance an emergency through the next council meeting. Let's say the city or an organization sets up a shelter temporarily. What happens if we don't reapprove? Most warming centers go till March 31st-ish. So what do we do? I can't think that we would expect people to open up a warming center and close it periodically throughout the cold season. And if we're only renewing it every 2 weeks, what is the option for those entities?
It can be renewed through the March 31st, but what we're doing now is, we had the meeting last night, the mayor's gonna have to actually declare the emergency. Under the State Emergency Act, the mayor can only declare such a local emergency for 7 days, and then the council needs to approve any period of time beyond 7 days. So we're giving a window to go to the next meeting, and then the administration can come back with a proposal at the next meeting to extend it to March 15th or March 31st under certain circumstances. So this is not going to have to be a constant revolving approval process for the emergency. But in the meantime, the city has time to address the underlying problem, which is the zoning ordinance lacks some clarity on shelters. We've never even recognized that these exist in our zoning ordinance, but okay, we can address that. And then some of the other funding issues can be addressed as well in the meantime.
Okay, thank you.
Madam
Mr.
President, so an example of a likely place might be Owen Jacks or the Fitzgerald Community Center? No? Owen Jacks?
I'm not prepared to talk about specific locations.
okay.
That would have to be something
was last night.
the administration
Yeah.
figures out. We're just trying
I
to
missed it.
set the process forward, so
Right.
someone's not gonna say, well, sorry, our zoning ordinance doesn't recognize a shelter, we're gonna call it a hotel and you can't operate this.
Right. So I think this would require a nonprofit to step forward to actually run it. And they might need some money because if you have a warming shelter, you have to have people there to operate it. And then they would
Mr.
have
Noonan, I think you need to listen to the audio from last night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of
Okay.
these things have been, you'll probably get a lot out of that.
I just really would like this to work, that's all.
Yeah.
I guess that's the only thing I really wanted to say.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Ms. Moore?
Just on this emergency, if I remember correctly, Mr. Fox will remember, during the pandemic, the mayor issued an emergency that we kept renewing, and I think that allowed purchasing to be, we could bypass the purchasing agreement for emergency purchases and things like that. So this is not unheard of. That was done during the pandemic. I don't know if you remember, we
Yeah.
kept renewing it,
Yep.
and sometimes we didn't.
Okay.
Yeah. I just am looking at Mr. Mazzarelli, and I can imagine having to build a shelter and collapse a shelter over a period of time would not be something the city and/or anyone else would want to be doing. So I just wanted to make sure that we were clear that there was a mechanism to go through the cold season, and that there
Okay.
wouldn't be, immense disruption.
Madam President, through the chair.
Mr. Dwyer?
Now, I'm assuming that we will be outlining limitations as to where these warming centers can and can't be, as far as libraries. We're here at the community center. I mean, that would be part of what we'd be looking at, correct? Okay.
Any other discussion? Okay. I will call the question. Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan?
Yes?
Ms. McGee?
Yes.
Rogan C. is a yes. Motion carries. Next item.
14A, request from the Budget Director to decrease the previously approved ARPA revenues and expenditures due to project scope and funding modifications approved by Council December 19, 2024. Consideration and adoption of a resolution. So moved.
Support Lafferty.
Discussion? Hearing none.
I'm sorry, Madam
Yep.
President.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Mr. Fox and Mr. Knapp for taking the time to go through this with me. It was a little bit more complex, so just wanted to thank you.
Okay, any additional discussion? Hearing none, I will call the question. Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan?
Yes.
Ms. McGee?
Yes.
Rogan C. is a yes. Motion carries. Next item.
14B, request of the Sanitation Division and the Public Service Director for an additional appropriation of funds in the amount of $65,000 to cover the increased cost to purchase 2 Labrie right-hand atomizer garbage trucks and 2 2024 Mack chassis, adoption and consideration adoption of a resolution. Motion to deny. Did I get his attention? Motion to approve.
Support Dwyer to approve.
Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, I will call the question. Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes to approve.
Mr. Noonan?
Yes.
Ms. McGee?
Yes.
Rogan C. is a yes. Motion carries. Next item.
Next item is 14C, request of the Sanitation Division to approve the purchase of 2 sanitation vehicles from Frederickson Supply in the total amount of $794,382. So moved.
Support Dwyer.
Discussion, anyone? Hearing and seeing none, I will call the question. Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Ms. McGee?
Yes.
Rogan C. is a yes. Motion carries. Next item.
14D, a request of the Police Department for an increase in budgeted appropriations in the amount of $7,586 to cover costs associated with the Civil Defense Department's budgeted sergeant position being promoted to lieutenant. Consideration and adoption of a resolution. So moved, much deserved.
Support Dwyer.
Support Boyke. Discussion? Hearing and seeing none, I will call the question. Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan?
Yes.
Ms. McGee?
Yes.
Rogan C. is a yes. Motion carries. Next.
Next item
Item.
is 14E, consideration and adoption of resolution approving fiscal year 25 grant agreement between the State of Michigan, Michigan Indigent Defense Commission, Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs, and the City of Warren Centerline through the 37th District Court. Motion to approve with discussion.
Support Lafferty with discussion.
Discussion, Ms. Moore, and then Mr. Lafferty.
Thank you. This is something we do, every year. Mr. Cervenek contacted me and said he would be on vacation and wouldn't be here. But I told him I didn't think that'd be a problem because we do this every year. And same thing with the next item. We're not spending money, we're taking money, so.
Mr. Lafferty.
Thank you. Through the chair to Mr. Fox.
Jesus.
Why does it keep
Static.
Yeah.
Electric personality.
My question was on the letter from Ms. Battle, and it says, this grant requires the use of fiscal year 24 unspent grant funds of $2.5 million and change. The question I had was that the grant award was $2.1 million, and I couldn't reconcile the difference between the 2.5 and the 2.1 being requested.
I think it's remaining funds from the prior year, but I'll have to review it, but I can get back with you on it, but I think that's what it is.
Okay, yeah, and it wasn't on the plan and cost analysis,
Okay.
and unfortunately, I forgot to ask during our meeting to go to the next item, and you were gone by that point, so.
I will
We'll
give you a
follow
call
up.
on that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I yield.
Any additional discussion? Hearing and seeing none, I will call the question. Ms. Moore?
Yes?
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan is absent for the moment. Ms. McGee?
Yes.
Rogan C. is a yes. Next item.
Next item is 14F, request for an adjustment in budgeted revenues and appropriations for Indigent Defense Special Revenue Fund in the amount of $295,848.53. This budget amendment accounts for the receipt of the Indigent Defense Grant Agreement and to transfer budgeted appropriations in the amount of $123,769.06 to comply with state law. Consideration and adoption of a resolution. So moved.
Support Lafferty.
Discussion, anyone? Hearing and seeing none, I will call the question. Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan?
Yes.
Ms. McGee?
Yes.
Rogan C. is a yes. Motion carries. Next item.
14G, appointment of Michael Wiegand to the Downtown Development Authority for a term to expire June 30th, 2028. So moved.
Support Dwyer.
Discussion, anyone? Hearing and seeing none, I will call the question. Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan?
Yes.
Ms. McGee?
Yes.
Rogan C. is a yes. Motion carries. Next item.
Next item is audience participation regarding general topics.
Members of the audience who would like to address City Council this evening may do so by filling out an audience form located at the right side of the stage. You have 3 minutes. This audience is for general topics. First up is Lori Harris, and then Joel Vanderlinden.
Hi there. I want to talk about listening to the Plant Moran presentation and $31 million. $31 million that wasn't spent, that was budgeted, or, you know, just in general. So I want to know how much of that is because we haven't hired our police officers. I want to know if that's because we haven't hired people in the city, in the departments. You know, I'm sorry that they left, so I couldn't talk to them, Mr. Fox and Mr. Knapp, because being happy that you have that money and it's really because you're not filling positions isn't helping the city. I want to know why the applications for police on the city website lead only to a very old 1990, I say 1980, but it's probably 1990 typed paper, asking if you heard about it through the Detroit News and the Detroit Free Press. That's unacceptable in our city. I saw a beautiful layout that the police had with union information and contract information, and you know, probably from some other place that they advertise. Why can't the city figure out how to link to that document? It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense why we are living in 1990 in our city. I want to talk about the mayor not responding to my letter to her, that her outreach director again breached illegally, used personal emails to promote his business. That is not right. An employee of the city should not be taking information that they got from something that I did at the city by signing up for something and using that for his own benefit. And I have notified HR, I have notified the attorney's office, and I've notified the mayor. This is the second time that the mayor has not responded. And the mayor was the first person I contacted before I actually went and did anything else or went public with it. So this is not acceptable, Mayor Stone, that you still have an employee that has done this twice now. And I also want to remind everyone that ADA is a civil rights law. And hello to Tony and Dorothy, and keep fighting. Don't give up, Tony, because what you have to offer is amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Joel Vanderlinden.
Well, I'm getting old. Joel Vanland, longtime Warren resident. Recently, I've been filling out a lot of FOIAs, trying to find out a lot of answers to a lot of questions. And one of the first FOIAs I got, I asked about who all applied for the police chief's position. And it was declined. And they gave me all these Michigan code things, whatever. I looked them up. They have nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with it at all. In fact, applying for the position in administration is just like running for council. All your name, your address, your phone number, all your stuff is put out for the public. And so should it be for the police chief or any other position within the city. Now, another thing I put a FOIA out for was the atrium. How many people have used or rented out the atrium in the last year under Mayor Stone, and how much did they pay? What was most interesting was not that what was given to me, what was omitted. And what was omitted was the atrium was rented out and used by Maya Zong. It's not in there. And I was looking under the gay parade and stuff like that, and it's not in there either. So why are certain people being charged, and why are certain people not being charged? And in going back on what Ms. Harris said, they were talking about this money and all these jobs not filled. And, well, permits and stuff are down because they don't have the people to do the inspections. As people has left, those jobs have not been filled by your intern, director, whatever, which should never be. And you know, you can sit there and look at, there's no teeth in these ordinances if this council isn't going to push through it and do it. Now, if you really want to get Ms. Stone, you do, according to the city charter, and I looked it up today, you can do a tribunal. That means 4 out of the 7 agree that a tribunal is done. You bring up charges, you take a vote, you send it to the governor, and you have her behind booted.
You're almost at time, Mr. Vanderlyn.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. That is the end of audience.
Next item, council response to audience. Madam Chair.
Ms. Moore.
This isn't really response, but someone contacted me and shared a post with me on Facebook. Hey neighbors, the Warren Fire Department was just here. They installed smoke alarms in my hall, all 3 bedrooms and the basement, and a carbon monoxide detector also in the hall, all for free. They told me to spread the word, so here's the info. Schedule yours today. It took 10 minutes. Be safe. The number is 586-756-2800. That's for the Warren Fire Department. Tell them you're interested in the smoke alarm program. And then other people chimed in that they had also had smoke alarms installed in their homes. Please, if you need a smoke alarm, you don't have them, you need them replaced, please call the fire department. They'll come out and install them. The equipment, the hardware is free, and the labor is free, and they're glad to do it. So please take advantage of that program we have. Thank you.
They were at my house today installing smoke alarms. It was great.
Good. Take some time.
The batteries last 10 years. It's fantastic.
We installed them.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Also.
Ms. McGee.
I wanted to add to what Secretary Mindy Moore has stated regarding the homeless shelter, that they are also in need of beds. So you could go online to order them yourselves, like cots and beds on Amazon, and they also take donations. So once we finalize where those homeless shelters will be, or warming centers, they are in need of additional beds. The second item is on January 20th. As you know, we celebrate MLK Day, and that we will be celebrating it in the city of Warren at the Civic Center from 11 till 3. It will be a service day. So we welcome you all to sign up online and be a part of it. Thank you.
Madam President, through the chair.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yeah, just to bring everybody up to speed, yes, many, many positions within the city continue to be unfilled and left open, and that certainly has something to do with the $31 million. But as far as it relates to the police department, we are still currently 22 officers down, and the only advertising we're doing is through MCOs. We're not doing social media, we're not doing academies, we're not doing job fairs, we're not doing any of that. So it's going to be very hard to bring on board qualified, good officers to this department. We did, towards the end of the last year, start up 4 officers in the FTO program. An additional officer is going through the academy, and it is my understanding that there is 5 applications in process. So we are making some movement, but I don't think enough. That's all I have. Thank you.
Too little, too late.
Anything further? Okay, next item.
Motion to adjourn.
Support.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.